With him in his office in the West Wing with our staffs to figure out how to revamp the SAFER program. That's what he did, eliminating a lot of the red tape so that cities and counties and towns could effectively use the federal assistance as a bridge to better economic times. Then he worked to fund those SAFER waivers at unprecedented levels. And in the last 3 years, this program has pumped more than $1.3 billion in direct federal aid to our jurisdictions with no strings attached, bringing back thousands of our members from layoff and keeping them working and putting more firefighters on those rigs to protect the public and keep our members safe at work. Brothers and sisters, while there's so much more that he has personally done for this union, our profession, our great membership, I cannot overstate the impact on preserving public safety, on the livelihoods of the men and women of the IFF who protect our communities all across this country. That the support of the President and this Vice President has had on us is nothing less than incredible. The most important issues of this troubled time that our members really need, that is keeping them on the job, so that they can keep our neighborhoods safe. We have an administration that has consistently demonstrated its commitment to us, to you. We have an administration that understands that our nation's recovery depends on job creation and has done all it can to make sure firefighters are on the front lines protecting and serving, not in the unemployment line. That record made the decision of the IAFF Executive Board this past June easy, as we considered the records of those running for the most powerful jobs in the world, and as we then unanimously endorsed the re-election of President Obama and Vice President Biden. The stakes are high in this election. Our longtime friend has been one of the best allies that the working men and women of this country have ever had. Now it's time that we all do what we have to do to make sure that he and his boss have 4 more years to continue their hard work on behalf of working Americans. 4 more years to continue their hard work on behalf of you. 4 more years to get firefighters back on their rigs, back in their fire stations, back on the job and securing our homeland. But that won't happen unless we make sure that he keeps his job. Sisters and brothers, please welcome our champion, the Vice President of the United States, Joseph.
It's nice speaking to an audience where you not only with whom you agree, but you feel totally comfortable with a whole lot of folks out there that I grew up with. By the way, where's Delaware? There you are. Well, stand up, man. We're small, but we're proud. I see you guys. When I ran as a 29-year-old kid, Harold, it was a tough race, and somebody, I made a statement that became sort of lore in Delaware. As the campaign was coming in, I said, look, there are 3 parties in Delaware. Democrats, Republicans, and firefighters. And I've got the firefighters. That's what I'm going to win. And as some of you know, I owe them so much more than my career. I owe them the life of my 2 boys, and I owe them a lot more. Folks, acclamation. You got re-elected by acclamation? Nothing in my life has ever happened by acclamation. As a matter of fact, I had to ask my wife 5 times to marry me before she said yes. So I don't know about this acclamation stuff, both of them. As my mother would say, God love you. Obviously they love you. And I do too, because I want to tell you. Harold's introduction, which was overly generous, as I stood behind the curtain here, and we've been doing this together for a long time. A long, long time. And I think we've made a lot of progress. But all that sort of in jeopardy right now. We're facing some real serious headwinds. You heard me say it before. In smaller crowds, meeting with some of you individually. You're caught in a perfect storm. First, this recession. The recession we inherited has just broken the budgets and the backs of so many towns, municipalities, putting their mayors in god-awful positions, making Hobson's choices, and putting you in an even worse position. A lot of your guys and women have been on the chopping block. The second piece of that perfect storm is a Republican Congress elected in 2010, overwhelmingly bent on obstruction, obstructing our efforts to help you, to protect your jobs, and keep enough people on the force to be able to protect your lives. Because what most people don't know out there is your lives are more in jeopardy, literally in jeopardy, when you respond without a full complement of firepower. For starters, almost to a person, every one of those members in that Congress, Republican Congress, voted against the Recovery Act. The Senate, all but 3, voted against the Recovery Act when we got in. Recovery Act, which allowed fire departments to rehire, to avoid layoffs, keeping more than 1,200 firefighters on the job, helping 120 fire departments modernize, build new fire stations, and in the process, creating jobs for others. They voted against it, but we prevailed. And then along in 2011, in the midst of the local budget crunches you all are dealing with every day, Republicans in the Congress voted to zero out the safety net. It was eliminated in the name of budget restraint. They went on and rejected our proposal for $1 billion in immediate funding to help fire departments rehire folks they had to lay off, prevent more layoffs. Make sure, as I said, you have the crew size you need. Folks, your job's not getting easy. There are not fewer fires. There are not fewer crises. There are not fewer accidents. It's not like there's any rationale to argue you can do as much as you did before with smaller crews. And then in 2014, for the 2014 budget, they've now proposed a $125 million cut. They lost the fight in limiting safer grants. Now they want to cut $125 million out of safer grants. Translated to my community back home, to the communities you all live in, that's 400 fewer firefighters. 400 fewer of you, ready to save our property, our lives. 400 more lead. The third part of this perfect storm is they, along with some Republican governors, saw this as a great opportunity to do what they've always wanted to do. A great opportunity to go at your very right to bargain, not only for your pay and your benefits, but for what you needed to protect your community. They've attempted, these governors, not all, most Republican governors, to lay the blame for this recession on you, on public sector workers. If you listen to the rhetoric, somehow you guys are the ones that came up with these wacky financial instruments on Wall Street. You guys are the ones responsible for city budgets, state budgets, being so drastically affected by this recession we inherited. Republican governors went after your ability to collect dues in the states of Florida and Arizona. They went after your collective bargaining rights in Ohio, New Hampshire, Florida. Tried to take away your ability to have a say on what type of gear you needed and the hours that you could safely work without jeopardizing your partner, you, and the effort. So let's take a look at what all this adds up to, this perfect storm. Why did they take these positions? I really genuinely act my, this is not your father's Republican Party. This is a different breed of cat. We didn't used to have these fights. We had Republicans when I was in the Senate and the House who were supportive, who understood the value you provide each of your communities. The thing that's changed as I've tried to figure it out. I think this new Republican Party looks at you as both the reason for and the solution to this god-awful recession we inherited. We inherited, by the way, because of their policies. The same policies they're continuing to push. They look at your ranks and they see an easy place to cut budgets to accommodate their priorities. Not just you. Cops, public workers generally. Don't take my word for it. Just listen to what Governor Romney, who, by the way, is a good family man, a guy who means well. I think part of the problem is I don't think he just gets you. I don't think he really understands. I mean sincerely. I don't think he understands what you're all about. What makes you tick? What makes you decide to go into this profession that you couldn't pay enough to 90% of the population, including me, to do what you do every day? He said, I quote, guaranteeing the government will keep its fire, police, and teachers intact is not an effective way to get the economy growing here. Tell that to the store owner. Without you, we lose everything we have. Tell that to the family. These houses now underwater, is burning down, and the ability for them to be able to get back to their feet is drastically altered because you're not around. Tell that to the family. It's a child. Mother and father, hand you're holding as that ambulance races through the street to try to get him to mercy. He went on to say, it's time to cut back on teachers, firefighters, and policemen. Not in my neighborhood, not in other people's neighborhoods. got back from fire and police. Our vulnerability, our exposure, ordinary citizens, it goes up exponentially. He further said, referring to Governor Romney, my own view is that right to work is the right way to go, and I'd like to see it on a national level as well. Did you think we'd be fighting these fights again in 2012? Ladies and gentlemen, maybe you knew him better than I did. But I didn't think I'd be standing before you all here. After all the times I've had the honor to appear before you, talking about whether we fight, right, to work for less, under the right to work philosophy that for so long, folks, as I said, this is not your father's Republican Party. These guys are a fundamentally different philosophy. Again, they're not bad guys. They just have a fundamentally different view. They have a different value set. My dad would say a different set of priorities. They act like you're the community's problem. As if you're not part of the community. As if somehow you come from some other place. As if you haven't been as affected by this recession as your neighbors have. Not because you're a firefighter, because you're a middle-class citizen trying to make it work. How many of you have had a spouse lose their job or get their hours cut? How many of you, because of this recession, have had to step in and help elderly parents meet their basic needs? How many of you with kids in college, how many of you have had that conversation at the kitchen table with your wife or your husband and saying, honey, who's going to tell her? Who's going to tell her, I don't think we can send her back to the State University this year. I don't think we can make it. How many of you had to consider what you do about your home? How many of you gone to bed at night staring at the ceiling, wondering whether you're going to be in that same house a month from now, 3 months from now, 5 months from now? How many of you picked up that phone and called the outfit that has your mortgage and said, I've never missed a mortgage payment, but I'm paying 6.5% or 7.5%. I know people are refinancing their mortgages at 4%. Let me refinance my home. It will save me several $1,000s a year. It'll mean I can pay for the automobile insurance I'm having trouble figuring out how to pay. It'll mean I'm going to be able to do A, B, and C. You see, where we come from, $3,000 a year makes a big difference. It matters. How many of you had that conversation just to hear a hollow voice on the other end of the phone? How many of you guys really had to tell your kids, no, I'm sorry, honey, no kids, no vacation this year. It's not the end of the world. How many of you? You live in the neighborhood you protect. You are the community. You and your brothers and sisters in law enforcement make it possible for people to live a basic middle-class life. You live in the neighborhood of those whose property and lives you swore to protect and help and save. Ask these guys what a different view it is. When someone's trapped in a second-story burning building, who's the guy that runs in? The woman. It's your neighbor. It's you. There's a car accident, and the husband makes that frantic 911 call and says, my wife is trapped. She's trapped in the vehicle. I can't get her out. Who do they send? Who shows up like he did for my family, the jaws of life? Pulls her out. Who drives the ambulance? Who holds her hand and reassures her all the way back, it's going to be okay. We're going to get you. It was hot and dry. It is in the West. And literally, lightning strikes. Someone tosses a cigarette from the car. Who throws their bodies, literally, physically, between the fire and people's homes and businesses, protecting their livestock, ranches? It's not easy strapping on that gear when it's 98 degrees before you can walk into that inferno to establish a fire line. Folks, I could go on. I think part of the problem is you guys, and I don't know how many funerals I've been to, I don't know how many events I've attended with you. Part of the problem is, ironically, is by your nature, y'all don't talk about what you do. You don't think of it in heroic terms. You just say, how many times have I heard you guys, particularly in my home state, say, well, just doing my job. It's my job. Like you showed up to, go to the copy machine. It's just my job. The vast majority of Americans, as I said, including me, you couldn't pay enough to walk into the infernos you walk in. The way you risk your lives in the line of duty. So many of your colleagues have given their lives. This is sort of my second city. I live 23 miles from here. Didn't have to go back like you invite Joe for a drink back home.
Yeah.
But right here in Philadelphia just a few months ago, two of your brothers gave their lives fighting a 5-alarm warehouse fire. A firefighter who died in Chicago just before Christmas on the roof of the building collapsed. He told his daughter, quote, never think of me as a hero, I'm just doing my job. Well, that's not what I told his family when I spoke to him. He's a hero. All you guys who strap that gear on, walk in God forsaken circumstances. I know it's your job. The heroes. It's hard for me to make those calls. It's hard for you to make them. It's hard for the brothers and sisters to see you go down. Work like hell to make sure you never leave it behind. The sound of bagpipes still ring in your ears. The vivid memories of every one of you in this room now. I used to like the sound of bagpipes until I grew up. I like it. Because all the memories. I don't think these this other team understands you guys. You're not in this just to fight for your jobs. You're in this fight because you care about the family next door. Because you care about your city, you care about your town, you care about your community. You see what happens when it takes 20 minutes instead of 10 to respond and see an accident or fire. It's your community. You're not responding somewhere else. That's who you guys are. They're guys I just don't think understand. Because if they did, why wouldn't they be doing all they could in this time of extreme budget crunch, which is legitimate, real crunch, everybody has to do something. Everybody has to make some sacrifice. It seems the only guys they ask are middle class guys. And the elderly. By the way, I come from Delaware. Per capita basis, I think it's still the wealthiest state in the nation. I'm not playing that. No, this card about wealthy people are bad. In my state, I learned one thing. Wealthy people are just as patriotic as poor folks. They're just as decent as any middle class folk I know. The difference here is no one's asking to do anything. You know, when we separated out the jobs, that provision that said we're going to put thousands of firefighters and law enforcement folks back to work, you know how we're going to pay for it? 0.5%, 0.5% increase in the tax on the first dollar you made after your first meal. Let me say that again. 0.5% additional tax on the first dollar you made after your first meal. The polling data at the time suggested that even people who were self-identified millionaires supported it. These guys almost took personal, said no. It's about shared responsibility. You know as well as we do. The country is out of this recession, but barely struggling to move forward. How many of you have literal blood sisters because of this recession out of work? Not firefighters, just out of work, through no fault of their own. I know, as I said, I don't think it's because this new Republican Party doesn't care. I think it's because they have a very different value system. As I said, this is not your father's Republican Party. They really, really believe that they have to cut you and millions of other middle-class Americans in order to rebuild this economy. Because they believe at its core, they believe that the way to rebuild the economy of this great nation is from the top down. It's like religion. They actually believe it. The reason they have to make all the cuts affect you all as well. They're refusing to support us trying to support you. Because they have to make room for more benefits and more opportunities. They're very wealthy. They say, Biden, don't start this wealthy, not wealthy game. It's reality. They say they got to make room so it doesn't further balloon the deficit. For the wish tax cuts, for the very wealthy. It's cost $1 trillion over 10 years. $800 billion goes to people with a minimum income of $1 million. $800 billion. The statistics are being updated. The last time it was updated in 2010. Roughly $500 billion of that, up to 120,000 families total. They're redoing the number now to make sure that the Secretary of State, but that could change a lot. What can we do for middle-class folks with $500 billion over this time? Is that your priority? Forget firefighters. Forget your job for a minute. Just think of your neighborhood. What do you think? Those 120 families, 120,000 families, households, what were they going to do? They're good people. I don't think it can make much of a difference in Claymont, or Wilmington, or Scranton. Look, folks,